Hello and good morning to our friendly visitors on our screens in the United States. Good afternoon in the more parts of the moving forward, also American territories, and good evening to Europe, such as British Standard Time or CET, 7 o'clock in the evening. Today, we are jumping in a topic which is as brand new, as old as the spending of money for advertising, marketing, and all included could be a return on the investment. And to make it even stronger and more sexy is to combine it with the aspect of being data driven and what marketing data driven and strategies could mean, would work, and how you can win with it, put new potentials, and go forward with existing customers is what we would like to discuss today with our expert Christian Bachem. Welcome, Christian. Cool to have you with us.
Yeah, great to be here. Perfect.
The incident that I was very curious, and you have been visiting that Hamburg first European Martech spin-off summit, was that you wrote a very nice report or a LinkedIn post on what you thought were the best bits and pieces you could take out of from your perspective as being in the business for a long time and an expert. And this was so cool for me that I spontaneously contacted you and you took the challenge and joined the gang. So cool for doing this, and I'm appreciating it very much. And I'm very curious. Could you please tell us a bit and the audience about your way in the industry and how you became a business expert and a strategy analyst on marketing?
Yeah, sure. Well, I started out 30 years ago as a media planner here in Berlin, where I'm still located, working for a small agency and doing operational and also strategic media planning. After 2.5 years, and I guess every media planner can understand this, I got a bit bored. And I switched over to New York for almost a year, where I also worked in this case, advertising agency, doing more strategic work, and also got introduced to the internet. Actually, I had my first email address back in '89 while I stayed at an American university in Indiana in Bloomington, but I couldn't use it because nobody in Germany had an email address, so I couldn't send any emails to my friends. I had to
got my first
write
one in
letters,
95.
print them out, and send them via mail. So back in '94 in New York, I finally got introduced to the internet. And having that experience, I returned to Germany and went on working in an internet advertising agency, one of the first in Germany, Pixel Park.
Yeah.
And I headed the unit at Pixel Park, which was in charge of consulting mostly brand marketers of several companies like Oetker, Unilever, Adidas, and so on, in making the first steps on the World Wide Web. And after that, like 3.5 years later, I concluded that I could do that on my own and started a strategy consultancy named Companion, which I left 4 years ago to finally get to Marketingspezialisten, where I'm in now, and I'm running the Berlin affiliate of Marketingspezialisten. We're a marketing strategy consultancy. Yeah, so that's basically what we're doing. And the focus of what we're doing is we consult either on purely strategic matters, or we help companies try to figure out what the topic might be today, how they could evaluate their ROI, their marketing ROI, or how they could not only evaluate that, but optimize it. And this is mostly data driven and analytical. Yeah, that's so what I'm doing in short and very short.
The obvious detailed question is what does work currently and what does not when it comes to branding, advertising, building reach for a brand.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, first of all, the question is, what are your targets? Like, as you just pointed out, is it branding? So what helps me to build my brand, to enlarge the reach of my brand, or what helps me rather short term to strengthen sales? So we oftentimes have this kind of schism between sales on the one hand and branding on the other hand. And as we all know, sales can be accelerated on a short term basis, but if you forget to invest in your brand, your sales will diminish over this given period of time. So you always have to find a balance between branding and sales. And what we're trying to do is to get the whole picture. And if we're talking about return on invest, we always try to figure out, and we always try to give proof, basically, what the long-term effect of a given marketing investment is and what the short-term effect is. And most times, companies have a pretty good view on their short-term effects, but they're kind of clueless regarding the long-term effects.
Why is that?
Yeah, because the signals are too weak. I mean, if you have a fast-moving consumer good company and you do a marketing investment, you can there are pretty well-established metrics to figure out if what the effect on marketing on sales is. But if you try to realize what the effect on branding is and what, on the other hand, the brand effect on sales is, the signals might get too weak. And then you also have internal political situations. We all know this, that marketing on the one hand and sales on the other hand are not always best friends. So there are certain, well, either political or methodological restraints on really trying to figure out how the ROI is and how you could optimize it. And this is where we help and where we assist.
Have there been any particular changes to the sort of problems your clients have been bringing to you over the past few years?
Yeah. One change is that there was this kind of illusion. If you look at e-commerce and if you look at digital marketing, there was this illusion that you could measure anything or everything that is digital, and that you have a direct link between whatever you do as an action and the reaction, and you have a complete measurement, a complete landscape. And now it turns out it's an illusion because, as we all know, cookies are dying. I mean, they're already mostly dead. And lots of those measurements are based or were based on cookies. And now people or companies and marketers and e-commerce marketers realize that losing cookies means also losing insight, or understanding that this insight that they had was actually oftentimes kind of an illusion. So actually we get more and more business from e-commerce companies who, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, wouldn't have thought about doing business with us because they thought they could steer everything on their own. But now they realize, oh no, they have to look at other approaches to figure out what the actual ROI is. So this is actually a larger change and a shift in the industry.
Let me jump in right into that one, as I was wondering, as looking into data privacy, EU GSGO, and a lot of challenges, and the changes in the allowance on cookies and what is still acting practice and what is already forbidden. Now, being a marketeer from the bottom of my heart and being in the sales arena as well, I was really concerned hearing that I have to go spending my money with no knowledge at all. Now, what is the cure the expert has to offer? What is the next big thing after Google Spooky Analytics?
That's a pretty complex question because it depends on what you're trying to analyze. So if you're looking from a CRM perspective or from a customer perspective, then the answer is always first-party cookies. So what the industry is trying to achieve right now is to gain as much information from customers in a compliant manner to have enough data to analyze and to basically go from there. The problem is for most of the companies that they don't have enough first-party cookies, because if you are a fast-moving consumer good company, why you as a customer be in a direct contact to that company? I mean, certainly you could buy certain things via direct-to-consumer e-commerce, but usually you take the route through retail. So there's a lack of direct contact. And this lack of direct contact means also there's a lack of data and the lack of knowledge regarding customers. So this is one of the largest challenges that the companies are having. And since you were referring to that Martech Summit in Hamburg, I was really struck, and I guess that was part of my post, that a company like Nestle, one of the largest FMCG companies in the world, that they're trying to gain first-party cookies in the millions to build up that knowledge and to build up that customer contact. And I'm really skeptical if they can achieve that. So this is one perspective. The other perspective, if you're in the situation like most of the companies are, and even e-commerce companies are, that you don't have this information or that the information is hard to analyze, what you could rely on, and this is a very old paradigm, it's like from the 70s, you do marketing mix modeling. You take data from the past and you do statistical analysis on those data to figure out what kind of action actually has what kind of impact. So this is pure advanced statistics, which actually these days is pretty much on drugs in the sense that it's, or on speed, let's say like that, because you have the underlying statistics are still the same mostly, but the computing power has increased so much that you can do those kind of analytics much faster than like even 2 or 3 years ago. So there have been great advances in marketing and media mix modeling just due to the fact that the computational power has increased by far. So those are like the challenges that companies are looking at or facing.
It's also kind of on drugs because they're all calling it machine learning and AI right now.
Good point. Good point. Some certain things that are called AI are actually not really AI because they're just old school statistics, but using new algorithms or maybe new machines.
Yeah. But the interesting point is that you are saying that they are still or increasingly relying on first-party cookies, which obviously for indirect companies, so B2B2C companies or other types of businesses is quite difficult. Why do you think don't they start relying more on information that is voluntarily given? Means registration processes, putting a CDP into place kind of thing, enabling a kind of progressive profiling by establishing an individual contact.
That's actually what they're trying to do. They claim that they have to get more first-party cookies, which actually often stands for as a kind of an alias or a proxy for any kind of information they might get from the customer, and that they might put into a CDP. So this is one of the major, as you all know, advancements or trends in the industry for probably the last 5 years, 2 years, I don't know, that companies are switching to CDPs to put all the customer information into one place and to activate it or make it actionable for any kind of campaigns or other kind of activities. So this is, but still, it's a challenge for lots of companies.
There was this other topic. So we started off with privacy regulations, and there is the other part that the browser manufacturers are increasingly looking at, disallowing cookies in general.
Exactly.
If people in general, or if more and more people do work like I do work, first checking what cookies are set, and out of curiosity, and then rejecting them all. What other technologies can the ad tech companies offer? Because let's face it, ad tech will not die.
No, it won't die. This is the big question where everybody's working on right now. One thing is, if it wouldn't be, or if it's not compliant, it could be something like fingerprinting. I mean, if you are using your browser reader on your handheld or on your laptop or whatever kind of device, there's so many information that you pass along, like the browser itself, certain parts, bits and pieces. So companies can make fingerprints which are, as a human fingerprint, pretty unique. So you could go away from the cookie, go to fingerprinting, but this is definitely not data privacy compliant because it's kind of basically spoofing and spying on you. The other way companies are going is to take a more like statistical approach and try to gather profiles that would be put into cohorts and then be anonymous. So you would be part of a cohort, and there would be a statistical judgment if you're male, how old you are, what your preferences are. And the third way to go is to, basically skip all kinds of cookies and fingerprints and to just go by contextual targeting. So just to trying to figure out what kind of content you're interested in, and then deliver ads based on the content you're looking at, or you're watching, or you're reading, or whatever. So there are certain tactics and strategies that companies are following right now, but it's not quite clear which way will prevail. And this is the big unanswered question for 3 years now, and probably going into the next year as well.
It's not even immediately clear to me how all of those things are so different from what we're doing now. How a digital fingerprint is different from a set of cookies, or how do you collect, how do you understand context without some sort of tracker? It seems incredibly complex to me.
It is.
So I'm guessing that this is not going to be solved anytime soon.
Definitely true. It is very complex. There are differences between all those things, but they're really left to the experts mostly. It's really hard to follow. But we have to be aware, even if you talk about cookies, it really depends on who is setting the cookie and how valuable the cookie is. This is something we did for the last 12 years. We were analyzing how precise cookie target or cookie-based targeting was or still is in the digital advertising realm, and we often found out that it's not precise at all. So one just mathematical or logical problem that you have with cookie-based targeting is, even if you have precision of like 50%, let's say like 75% on judging you as either male or female. Let's say a cookie is like 75% precise. So most targeting criteria are just not on one criterion, but like gender plus age. So then you have the age bracket, and you have to multiply those things. So oftentimes you have like precision on a cookie like 25 or 30%. So oftentimes the cookie is less precise than working without a cookie, which sounds like a paradox, but if you look at it on a mathematical basis, it's oftentimes not a paradox, but it's quite logical. So cookies have been a big illusion in the market. And here I'm talking about cookies that you use to profile people, and it's a different situation if you talk about retargeting or remarketing cookies. Like if you visit a website on an e-commerce website and you look for a certain product, then this is pretty precise. Then the company setting the cookie knows that you at that time had an interest in that product. Could be that you're not interested anymore because you chose not to buy it, or you bought it. But still, this is a pretty precise signal. It's much more precise than gender or age or other things. So we even have to differentiate between different types of cookies.
How do data brokers get into that picture, and how will their role probably change? I mean, there are those entities that are at the middle of all of it.
Yeah, I guess since data brokers, I mean, that's not a new business. Data brokers are around for like 40 years, 50 years, even longer. And they probably had their heydays in the 90s where people were talking about computer-based direct marketing. And then came the internet and companies thought, oh, we don't need a data broker anymore. We do our own data brokerage. We collect our own data. And I guess it could be a renaissance for data brokers, because more and more companies realize that it's quite clever to not only rely on data collected through a digital communications or through the internet, but also to, again, like back in the 90s, use hard signals from the real world, like purchasing data, what kind of data you ever have. And I guess I would call it a renaissance for data brokers.
That's an interesting view, because I mean, what they collect is often not collected via GDPR means or via compliant means. And then what they often do as well is say they have a justified interest, which they argue is justified because of their business model, but that's kind of a cyclic argumentation, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, that's true. I mean, I was referring to data brokerage that is like data privacy compliant. I'm not too deep into how actually data brokers or the data of data brokers are compliant or not. But if they would be compliant, I guess it could be a renaissance, or could be a renaissance for them, because there are certain cases of companies who actually go away from collecting. I mean, they don't stop, but they're more focusing on external data than on internal data, or data gathered on the internet, because as I mentioned before, there has been this illusion that we have all, or companies have all kind of valuable data, and now they realize, oh, it's not valuable at all, or it's not solid, it's not, you can't base too many marketing activities on them. So they're looking for other sources, and some of the sources could be traditional data brokers.
Okay.
Well, you were always not entirely sure what you were going to get from a data broker, though. Is that not true? I mean, back when it was just a question of selling contact lists, there was no way to verify if that information was current or correct, and it's still more or less true. It's a gamble.
That's true.
How has the situation improved?
I wouldn't say that the situation has improved, but I guess there's more of a clarity that internet-based data are not as valuable as they have been seen before. And I would always, and this is something that we do for clients of ours, would always do kind of A and B testing. So do smaller chunks of campaigns or whatever you kind of run, and do targeting using data broker data, do targeting without data broker data, and try to figure out which works best. And there are good instruments to basically figure that out. But you're right. On the offset, you don't know what you get. You have to basically challenge it and run tests, and then find out if you're on the right track. Yeah.
So is it very much into the area of what you described as the marketing mix modeling you try to utilize for de-anonymization in a certain degree of the anonymous visitor of a website? Question one.
I guess I didn't quite get the question.
It is your suggestion for getting an unknown visitor who wants to be anonymous or is anonymous, as you cannot track him, that your helping hand is, well, don't worry, there were ages where you had no cookies and you had anonymous visitors, and there was still a website existing. So use the marketing mix modeling, which is giving you some hints. But I was questioning myself if I would feel comfortable with my marketing dollars. As always, there is a chap who is coming around, who has the money, who is claiming that marketing is the department for singing, drinking, partying. And they don't do any good. Yeah? Singen, spielen, tanzen is one of the prejudices they love to share with you. And then you are in the corner with the funny hat on, with the donkey ears, such as, but we did, and we have that proof. So how can I give him some real stuff he can touch and feel to prove that we still are able to do return on investment calculations, that we have something which goes from, such as we throw this amount of advertising money into the funnel and we get out there some benefit for the company.
Yeah, this is exactly what the marketing mix modeling can do on a kind of scientific basis, because it's like, as I said, advanced statistics. The only drawback might be for the marketer that the impression that the lever that marketing has might be a bit off. So if the marketer thinks of himself or herself that like 80% of what I'm doing is having an impact on company results, the marketing mix modeling will probably prove it's rather like 35%. So, but those 35% could still be a good proof towards like sales, or whoever claims that marketers are only drinking, singing, and dancing. So there might be a drawback, but on the other hand, there's a big positive effect. And what this does, it doesn't only, so marketing mix modeling doesn't only prove certain things, but it lays the groundwork for optimization in the case, or in the sense that you can start doing and calculating scenarios. Like, if I would like to improve sales by 150%, how much more do I have to spend on marketing? Or if I next year have the same marketing budget, how many more sales can I still achieve by optimizing this marketing mix? So you can start running simulations, and you can also look at the funnel, like sales does it. Like, okay, you go from the bottom of the funnel and you work your way up. So usually what we often have in marketing is, if marketers talk about their budget, they think of, okay, what was the budget we had last year? Let's try to have like 5% more. So they base their budget on the past. Also, maybe what the competition is doing, or what's going on in the market. But what you can do using marketing mix modeling data, or using a marketing mix model that you then have, is asking the question, okay, what do I want to achieve? Like branding plus 20%, sales plus 30%, and then going from the funnel up to how much do I have to spend? And you can do this for every step or stage in the funnel. So it's like a full funnel approach where you can, basically use this model for. So you're not singing, dancing, and what was the third thing? Drinking anymore. But you're really working on stats and trying to help the company to achieve the goals.
And how is this helped to be data driven? As I trust that this is one piece of the cure for getting rid of those fantastic cookies and spying, spoofing, and God knows what is not of the interest of the user or somebody who is cautious about his data privacy. So we have something smart in our hands. Give us a hand and show us what is in the hand to make the data-driven marketing ROI cool and specific.
Yeah, to be data-driven is actually the key. So just to give you some insight into a project that we're running, oftentimes when we are starting a marketing mix modeling project for a client of ours, the client is quite optimistic on the quality of the data, regarding the amount of the data they have, regarding how quickly they can collect the data and hand them over to us so that we can statistically work on them. And most of the time it turns out, well, we don't have exactly the data that we thought that we had, or well, we don't have that many data, we don't have them in the digital form, and sometimes project even collapse because the data can't be provided. For example, data on marketing spending, media spending, sit with an agency, and the agency is not in charge anymore. So the data has left the building. So once you're data driven and you have, a data lake or any other kind of pooling of data that you could either hand over to somebody like us, or you could give us an API to connect with certain data. This speeds the whole process up by month, even, or weeks or month. And as I said, oftentimes or sometimes projects just collapse because the data is not usable at all. So this is key, and this has improved within the last years, but it's still, for most of the company, it's still a challenge to really get into past data and try to make them work.
besides not having the data because one outsourced the whole service, including the decision making on how to distribute it,
Exactly.
which probably gets rectified by some insourcing again. What are other major flaws in the data that you see? Or deficiencies, probably the
Yeah,
better word.
deficiencies. This is rather the quality. Is that the structure of the data is not aligned. So you have data in different formats. You have monthly data on that, weekly data on this, quarterly data on that. So you have to, align those data. This is usually the first step that we have to do. That we have to align the data. We have to put them in the format that we can start working with them. That they that actually an algorithm can work with it and can run on it. And as we all know, this is partly due to, or mostly due to organizational challenges or structures, that data are not in one place, that sales data have different aspects than marketing data, than media data, and so on and so on and so on.
So silos are still a problem.
Silos are still a problem. Companies are trying to get rid of silos, but it's a long journey. And what we're seeing is there's still a problem, definitely.
We're never going to get away from that.
No.
We'll mitigate one type of silos by creating other ones.
Yeah, probably.
But what, based upon what you see, and apart from doing the obviously impossible, means get rid of silos, what would you recommend your clients, or a company that searches the services of a service provider like you? What's your recommendation they should do first in order to not sink too much money into projects that reduce the ROI than the overall ROI of the that is intended to get?
Yeah. One of the things that we always recommend is to make sure that data stay within their realm. That, as you pointed out, if an agency is leaving because the contract is resolved, that the data don't leave the house, that it stays with the company, that the company has the legal right on its own data, for its own data, so that they but this is oftentimes not what they'll have a focus on, and that they also should work on. I'll give you an example. Oftentimes what companies are doing, and this is basically a good base to work on, is they do either quarterly or monthly surveys to basically figure out how their brand is perceived. This is done by the research department, and the research department does it due to their own quality understanding and quality assurance. But what they're lacking is to try to figure out how those data they collect on a probably monthly basis could be used afterwards. For example, if they would include within that survey the question, what kind of media people are using. So not just asking, do you know my brand? How do you think of my brand? Are you using my brand? Why are you not using my brand? Whatever. If they also would ask, what kind of media are you using usually? So is it rather TV, digital, print, and so on? They could run segmentations and figure out, wow, people who use my brand are doing this, people who don't use my brand are doing that, and so on. And this is a perfect basis for statistical analysis in the long run. So this is something that we could use. But so you have a connection between your activity and the outcome. But this is almost never done. So we get those isolated brand data without any information on media, for example. So this is because companies don't think from the end, or from whatever kind of perspective. They don't have the long perspective on how data could be used. So data are collected, but without the idea of what what could I use them for, and what are basically the things that have to be done collecting the data. What should I think of collecting the data so that I can use them or utilize them in a more effective way later on. This is basically a lack that, because research oftentimes doesn't talk to CRM, and they don't talk to marketing, they don't talk to sales, it's isolated. So that we don't have silos in the sense of data silos, but we have organizational silos and silos and competencies.
Now you're partly saying that historical data is even missing or inconsistent. Now, that reminds me of the bad old days of big data, where we just collected for collecting sake, because we may be able and in the need of using it. But that also creates the problem that data gets stale. At some point in time, it's getting old. Yeah. Is there a rule of thumb about when certain types of data are old or just too old?
Oh, that's a good question. I wouldn't say there's a rule of thumb, but it depends on the industry. If you have an industry where the business model for the whole industry has changed within the last 5 years, and you take data that are 10 years old, you could question yourself and should question if those data are valuable at all, because they refer to a business model that is not in place anymore. And it could actually be bad to use those data, because they could put you on a path that's basically wrong and give you hints and signals that are wrong. If you have a stable business model, it could be fine using, if it's really strict and good data like customer data, it could be fine to use them like use data that are 20 years old. It really depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to figure out. So I wouldn't say there's a general rule of thumb. You have to look at the application of the data, and you have to look at the business model that's behind that.
Well, taking a B2C business model in particular, so using cookies and other technologies, those companies collected vast data points about me, for example. Now, well, I'm still there. They might still be interested in selling their stuff to me, or their goods to me, their wares to me, however we want to dub it. And in how far can we, for a particular use case like this, say, also thinking about journey orchestration or journey analysis, what is the maximum age of data I should look at?
That's a good one.
That narrows it down.
I probably should take a list for today.
Well, again, this might depend on the business model. I mean, if you're looking at car manufacturers and the journey that consumers or customers usually take before really deciding on what car to buy, they might have several contacts with the company. And so it could be that even data that are 2 years old might indicate certain things and might still have a certain value. If you, for example, take tourism, it could be that those data are completely useless, because in the meantime, within like 2 years, you might have traveled elsewhere, you might have changed your ideas and views on how you want to spend your vacation.
There might have been a pandemic.
There might have been a pandemic, which is a huge shock variable in all those data. But just to actually, when we talk about those kinds of data, we are not in the marketing mix modeling realm anymore, because what we're doing in marketing mix modeling is that we actually not talking about customer data that much. We talk about customer data in the sense of hard customer data, like leads, contracts, sales, but not cookies. We can't use them. They're just not strong enough, valuable enough, valid enough. So we need better data than that. If you want to set up a customer journey analysis, you could rely on cookies, but this is a different topic then, because it's a different statistical approach from marketing mix modeling.
How do you use marketing mix models? So I'm just thinking on and on here. I'm looking at companies like Apple, which are regularly creating markets. How do you use marketing mix model for this endeavor?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. That's one of the major restrictions of marketing mix modeling. You have to have a past. So if you're moving into new markets, you don't have any data. And if you don't have data, you can't set up a model. I mean, you can make predictions, you can make scenarios, but not based on those statistical analysis, because what we need for a marketing mix model to be solid is at least 3 years of data. So if you don't have this track record, there's nothing you can calculate. And just to give you more clarity in what kind of data we're using there, it's, as I said, it's not data on, well, it's actually what you do is you use two types of data. You use input data and output data. So output would be number of sales, number of leads, whatever in that time period, 3 years. And input would be marketing spending by channel, like TV, how much you spend on TV ads, on outdoor ads, on print and whatever. Then also the footfall in your shop, if you have a shop, the traffic in your e-commerce, not looking at cookies there, but just at like visits and so on and so on. And then you basically do a statistical analysis between the relations or on the relations between your input and the output. And what you will find usually is that marketing has a certain lever, as I said before, maybe 30%. But like lever number one could be if somebody already is a customer, the probability that that person buys the product again or buys a product is much higher than you could make him buy just using marketing impact. So you have certain things that you have, and this is basically what you find out. So what are the drivers of the output, and how strong is the impact on marketing of marketing on the drivers?
And if you want to change behaviors, like go from
good luck.
We had a pandemic, right? There was a very explicit incentive for driving customers online. So if this very explicit incentive is missing, but I still would like to drive my customers online because it's just far more efficient to sell out of my big ass warehouse that I have somewhere, or the couple of warehouses, instead of out of shops. Is there any way to use marketing mix technologies as predictors to how I should change my marketing mix in order to get this desired outcome, which is more sales online as compared to offline?
Yes, you could. If you combine it with the segmentations, or actually what you would do then, you would run several models for different customer segments, and you would look at the customer segment that already is shopping online, and you would take a look and what are the measures that drive those customers compared to what are the measures that drive traditional customers. And then you could apply those measures to traditional customers, trying to figure out if that leads them to change their behavior, which is always very hard to do. But at least you could see some patterns and use those patterns for like tests on other customer segments. If like figuring out if you could move those segments. But you have to be aware that it's really hard to change customer behavior, and we already found out. I mean, if you look at online sales during the pandemic, they peaked, or they really jumped. But what we're seeing skyrocketed. But what we're seeing right now is that they flattened. So if you draw a line between the share of online sales back in 2019 and now in 2022, what you see is that actually the line is straight. But what happened in between is that in 2020 it jumped up, and now it's declining again. So lots of companies, lots of e-commerce companies thought, great, we accelerated our growth, but now they have to live with 2 years of declining growth because the behavior was because of a shock. And people fall back to their old behavior once they have the option to shop however and whatever they and wherever they want to shop. So it's really hard to change people's behavior, even if it changed in between. So it's really interesting to see that.
And how do you see the trends? If you look that there are a lot of layoffs, do you see aside of economical reasons driving up shareholder value, that there are reasons that they found out we have to refocus our marketing activities as vendors, not going to empathy, CX, or that, but go for more classical approaches? As one question I would like to place. And the other is, what research, aside of probably your own research, you would recommend our audience to dig into to get aside of just looking to a crystal ball to get some predictions for upcoming next months?
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough because I guess we're facing difficult month ahead, difficult time due to the price increases, inflation, and prices, recession, and so on. I guess a good research, maybe someone to follow would be Byron Sharp as a marketing expert who's always trying to counter certain views on marketing, in the sense that he's trying to prove by analysis and by scientific measures how important, for example, it is to not diminish your reach too strongly, because this is something that often happens if you do too much targeting. If you narrow your audiences too far, you lose reach, you lose visibility, and you risk not being recognized anymore, and falling out of focus of people who might buy you. So he's actually talking a lot of the difference between buyers who are concurrent buyers of your product, and then buyers who rarely might buy your product but still might consider your product. And if you forget about those buyers by targeting too strongly on the ones that are within the best segment, the most economical segment, then you risk losing market share and so on. There's lots of research on that. That's always I guess a good remedy trying to counter the too narrow targeting approaches. And this is also, I guess, a risk that companies might be running now if they go for like first party data, looking at their best customers, that they target too narrowly, and that they might actually have problems keeping up their reach and their volume.
Could you repeat the chap's name, please, again?
Yeah, sure. It's Byron.
Byron, okay.
Byron, and then Sharp. As
like the knife.
Like the knife.
Okay.
Mac the.
Okay, not that one.
And that is the question for the research. And the other was, what is your personal observation and feeling? Are vendors refocusing in their approaches and going back to the usual approach, such as if I don't get the quick money, I invest in another field?
Vendors in the sense of technology vendors?
Software vendors like the big names, not the consultancy companies, but those which claim to be the market leaders if you go to some quadrants from some magic guys.
Well, I'm not a specialist on this one, but
Then let's go into your territory.
Yeah.
If you see your customers where you are consulting, where are they refocusing right now? Do they cut off everything in advertising, go for the man in the chair, such as McGraw-Hill? I don't know you. I don't know your reputation. I don't know your company. I don't know nothing. Now, what you want to sell to me, and what is your advice to do some countermeasures? Or are they, with some distinction, readjusting their spendings or their approaches to the market?
The companies are rather readjusting. They're not in it for a revolution, but rather an evolution. Also, due to their organizational restrictions. I mean, you have lots of companies that talk about transition, digital transition, and disruption. But, well, let's face it, which company is actually disrupting? They have a lot of work to do on cultural change within the companies, but it's evolutionary. So they're trying to refocus, but it's done step by step, which I think is actually a wise thing to do. There might be exceptions in markets that are completely declining, where companies have to refocus radically, but those are rare exceptions.
Okay, thanks for that hint.
Okay, towards the end, as the hour is coming up, there's a favorite question that the three of us even at least like, which is the glass ball. In the arena of marketing, what are, let's say, one or two things that you'd like to see happen? Not the things that are gonna happen, but what you think should happen.
Okay. So it's not the crystal ball, but it's like my own crystal ball where I can wish for something.
Feel free to dream.
The fairy godmother approach. You have three wishes. What would you like to come through?
One would be that companies start to focus more on that companies challenge their approaches and focus more on reality than illusion, because oftentimes what we find is corporate illusions. People think they have the data they need, and we find out now they're far from it. That would be one thing. The other thing would be closer cooperation within the companies between marketing and sales, understanding that they're like two sides of a coin and that they have to cooperate. Certain companies have achieved that or are on a good way to achieve it, but in other companies it's like internal warfare. And the third one, well, I have to spontaneously. I just have the two that I just mentioned.
Well, that's two more than I would have had. So, which is good.
And it's two more than we're likely to get. So Yeah.
Right. So that's
A wish is a
that's been
wish.
great.
Yeah.
That's been great. I learned a lot today while having fun doing so.
Yes. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming.
You're more than welcome. Thanks for those great questions. It was a pleasure. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go.
Very grateful.
Next.
And
Peace.
Let's go backstage and hope to see the audience again soon. Means next week. Okay.
Yeah.
you
See you.
next
Bye.